Right now, we'd like to bring on a young man who believes in doing things his own way. And based on the way he kind of get next to all of the folks who've seen him work, his way has got to be pretty hip. So let's lay some noise.
Listen up, my boy.
2000 and beyond.
To fight for this so-called democracy.
Yo, welcome back, fellow BUCS fans. Thanks for joining me back here once again on the Outside Leverage podcast. Here with me on this one, man, I got two special guests. One is a returning guest I've had on here twice now, I believe. Out of Memphis, Tennessee, fellow BUCS fan, Big Slim. Tell me something good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Glad to be a part of the podcast, brother.
Indeed, man. I appreciate you. And a very special, I got to throw very in this one, young Rhett Matthew from the world-famous CannonFire Podcast. You can catch him on YouTube. Just got 1,300 subscriptions, if I'm not mistaken. He and the Philly BUCS fan, young Evan Wanish, two of the best podcasters out there. Consistently good work. The best podcasters in the game appreciate them and love them for what they do. Rhett Matthew, man, appreciate your work. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. How you feeling tonight, man?
Oh, man, I sincerely appreciate your flattery, but it's an honor to be here, man. I'm excited to talk some BUCS ball with you, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Indeed. Now, Rhett, you recently had to have two separate interventions almost, from our Week 5 loss against Chicago in Chicago. You and I, we ended up speaking a little bit on that second intervention and kind of trying to get an understanding of what was going on, man. And we all kind of agreed that we were going to just touch on some of the stuff that stood out to us individually and collectively just come up with some things that kind of explain that almost, I think I still want to call it the heartbreaking loss. That was a game that the BUCS should have won. We, the fans, all expected that to be a win. And going into the fourth quarter and seeing how the game had transpired back and forth, I think we still believe that was going to be a win all the way to like the last possession. If you had to pick one thing that stood out to you the most, Rhett, I'll start with you. What is the one thing that you still probably just kind of, you have a what if in your mind? What is the what if in that game for you?
I don't even know so much about a what if. It's more of a no, what happens if. But it was at 3rd and 17, deep in their own territory, the roughing the passer call on Shaq Barrett. I mean, without that call, Bears go 3 and out. They're punting the football, giving it back to the BUCS right around the 40-yard line. If that happens, BUCS win the football game. Like, I am almost certain that the Buccaneers win the football game, regardless of everything else, regardless of the, multiple BS calls that we saw throughout the evening, the ridiculous undiscipline from the offensive line, which definitely needs to be addressed, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later. But out of all of that one roughing the passer call, just that sealed the deal for me, and it's going to be in my football-related nightmares for many, many years to come.
You're not alone. I actually did a poll on 4 or 5 different Facebook groups, all BUCS related groups, and every single one of them, that was the top of the list. Every single one. The penalties overall were terrible. That was the most egregious, like the worst of every call that happened. That was absolutely the worst. I know you took a look at that several times from different angles, including all 22 that came out like the day after. And there was not one, it's just not any explanation that could have been given to justify that call. Slim, on that call itself, man, did you take a look at that one again, and did that kill you as much as it killed Rhett and myself?
Absolutely. Like, I think the call was BS. I think, with the refs, I think they was kind of going back and forth, giving each team a call, or, trying to make up bad calls throughout the game. Even just to keep it real, even with the Khalil Mack roughing the passer, I don't necessarily think that was a roughing the passer. So I think it was a lot of, kind of making up for bad calls and everything. But with the Shaq Barrett, roughing the passer, that was totally, asinine as far as it being what they think it was or what they called it was. It was BS.
Yeah, and the thing about it, it was so close to be. It was a game-winning kind of penalty. Like I felt like it needed to have been clear cut, and it shouldn't have been any question. Like most calls, like every call is supposed to be. But with that game on a 3rd and 17, where they literally saving those cats, I thought that should have been a discussion. I know that they don't review those calls, but that one definitely should have been, because the game basically depended on that. If they don't get that first down, like Rhett says, it's game over. It's game over. There's no two ways about it. The game is done. Now, I guess I'll save that point for a minute. That it shouldn't have come down to that possession and to it being 3rd and 17. I don't think it should have gotten to that point. But just speaking on the penalties, which a lot of us have kind of planted on, and we just like, okay, well, not us, but a lot of the more vocal fans are just like, well, the offensive line penalties, they killed us. The BUCS had 7 offensive penalties in that game. 3 of them came on one drive. On one drive. We had a drive that had 3 freaking penalties. It was 2 holding calls, I believe, and then there was the Mike Evans arch rivals when he just walked around. He was just running, pushing everybody out of the way like a 3-year-old. Last year, Bruce Arians told us, the fans, the penalties were cleaned up. And he said that we weren't going to beat ourselves anymore. That's not been an issue. It's not been the issue. Rhett, can you speak on the discipline that this team now still lacks, even under different leadership, even under, the various coaches, specifically this coach who speaks so blatantly, so outwardly about his team and what they are and what they are not. The team is still having these same issues.
I think the most baffling part of it is that it's happening at this time of the season. Like the way that Thursday night looked, and granted it was Thursday night football, short week football is always ugly, but that looked like a week 1 game. And I almost feel like looking back at the Saints game, they absolutely shot themselves in the foot, but I think they played a better football game than they did. Obviously the run game was doing really good against Chicago. Ronald Jones had himself a 100-yard day. Mm-hmm. He definitely didn't do that week 1. But aside from that, it really seemed like this team was just, in the wins that they had, it seemed like they were a little bit more disciplined than I remembered them. And then all of a sudden you just had this piss-poor performance on Thursday night. I think the constant undiscipline is sad because, like you said, it feels like it doesn't matter who the head coach is, doesn't matter the staff you've got on the sideline. It's every single year. It's 2010 when you had all those rookies starting BUCS ball. That's what I remember about that team was undisciplined. Yeah. Every team between now and then there was quite a bit of undiscipline at certain points of the season. So the fact that it is a lingering issue, I hate to point fingers, and I'm not going to.
It's okay. You can point fingers. Nobody can see us.
Yeah, right. I don't know, man. I wish I had a better answer for you, but it is absolutely insane that years and years, doesn't matter the head coach, doesn't matter the players that are on the field, some way, somehow, this team just always finds a way to shoot themselves in the foot. And we've even talked about the progress that this team has made. This defense, this secondary in particular, weeks 1 through 4 of the season, we're talking about how much better they look than they were last year and how this team looks ready to kind of, stack some wins together and take on, I guess, I don't want to say take on more fierce opponents because it doesn't matter who's on the schedule at the end of the day, but be taken more seriously. Yeah. And the fact that it always happens on a national stage, to make everybody kind of blow it out of proportion.
There's a night curse.
Yeah, it's just... It really is crazy, man. And I don't know if it's something in the stadium. I don't know if it's something in the air. I don't know if it's something about the uniforms and that red and pewter color combination. I thought they fixed the uniforms, but there is something about the BUCS that up until this point has just never really ever been disciplined, at least for, at least 17 years. So I guess that's just where we're at now, and we got to see how this team can adjust.
Slim, before I get your take on the penalties and so forth, I want to backtrack and get back an audio clip here of Coach Bruce Arians when he was addressing at the end of the season last year, when he was addressing the turnaround and how the BUCS weren't going to beat themselves and how the penalties killed them. This is just one of the clips that one of the quotes that he kind of gave when asked about the discipline of the team last season.
Bruce, what was your message to the team in the locker room just now?
It's a shame that, this was a game that we talked about all year of us beating us in all three phases, and we did. And there wasn't, hey, he lost the game, fire him. No, there's not, because it was offense, defense, special teams. So it's like we will not beat ourselves next year.
You mentioned
we beat ourselves twice this year. 4 games, and twice we've beaten ourselves. Again, the penalties have been an issue in this one game. I mean, the BUCS lead the league with 42 penalties. A lot of them haven't been super egregious, and we've never seen a series the way that we saw in the last game, where you had it was 5 penalties, but only 2 of them got upheld. We didn't see a drive like that in any of the games, but they still linger. Like that discipline, people losing their temper, and a couple of them were BS calls. I can't even lie. The headbutt that Troy Aikman claimed was on television, that was no damn headbutt. If you saw that play and you go back and look at it again, they literally were just face-to-face talking. There was no headbutt. That should not have been a penalty.
Johnson does that every week.
He does.
I just want to throw that in there, too.
No, he absolutely does. He goes looking for trouble, and this time he got it, and he didn't deserve it. And he really didn't, and he didn't do the damn thing. But he absolutely goes looking for trouble every single series, and it cost him on this one. It was crazy. Slim, did any of that stuff, man, did any bother you? The penalties? Do you think that's a lingering issue? I don't think it's as big as an issue as a lot of other fans. But what's your take on the penalty side?
I mean, with me, I definitely concur that the penalties is definitely a huge issue, and it definitely just kind of goes into the BUCS beating the BUCS type of narrative. And like I said, on that drive, it was 5 penalties, and during that drive, that was toward the end of the third quarter. And we was down, and when you look at at one point in time it was 1st and 30, and it was just like you can't. It's one thing I was kind of listening to. I watched NFL Live before the season. It was one thing that I forget his name, but he was a long-standing teammate of Tom Brady, and he was like, hey, the one thing you don't want to do is kind of since you have him, don't lean on him. Don't just expect Tom Brady to just work his magic all day long. Like, you still have to help him and kind of play around him. Don't just sit back and say, well, we got Tom Brady, just throw our hands in the air and expect him to just pull us out of every hole we dig. And, we started, first 10 at the 50. When the penalties were over, we punt the ball, it was 4th and 27. You can't – that drive was just – I think that drive was one of the turning points as far as the play of the night was going downhill. You got Tom Brady cussing out the offensive line, and with Ryan Jensen, he does those kind of headbutts type of thing to kind of stick his nose in the defensive tackle's face and kind of let him know he's not going to back down. But I think during the course of that game, I think something should have been said, or a conversation should have been had on the sideline to kind of let them know, hey, the refs are really being finicky about what's going on during this game. Control yourself. Watch what you do. Don't have any, extracurricular type of things, after the play. And that's definitely concerning Jensen. And it was just bad, man. It was. I think I'm bald headed, and I was putting my hair out during that drive because that was like I said. I think that was a very instrumental drive for us to kind of make something out of, to kind of get us at least the lead or get us down the field to kind of turn that drive into a score. And, due to those penalties, we had to punt the ball off, and Chicago got the ball back and ran it down. It took 7 minutes off the clock and ended up getting a field goal out of it. So it's you can't have those things, man. I definitely felt Tom Brady's frustration. It's just, you're not my thing is, it's like you have all these veterans on the line, and you have a rookie and Tristan Wirfs, and Tristan Wirfs acts like he's the more mature guy on the line. You know, everyone had a penalty that on that drive. You know, besides, I know Tristan Wirfs had the first penalty, but
right,
it's we can't have that, man. We can't.
So let me ask you. You said that there should have been a conversation. It should have been a point made to because the referees were, you know, being super finicky with the calls. Who makes that call? Who is the guy? The coach. Who is the coach or the player that makes that point to the players, to the other coaches, and everybody else around? Like who would you look to make that point? Is that a head coaching thing, man, or is that the offense? Who is that?
I mean, I would go with coaching first and foremost. You know, it's not even the head coach. I mean, the positional coach. You know, the O-line coach should have been picking it up. I think it should have started with the coaching, and it should have ran down to the position coaches like, hey, you guys, you know, definitely watch what you're doing. They're really calling a lot of penalties. And even on the offense, you know, you can put that on Tom Burton and he is the leader of the troops. And it's like, hey, you guys, you know, even with the first penalty or the second penalty, it should have been, you know, some barking and cussing out in the huddle. Like, no, we can't have this. Stop. Like, please stop. It was just one of the things. It was weird, man. It was like, you know, at some point, I was like, it's just the refs picking on us, man. But it was just really sloppy play, man. I don't know if the Bears would get into us, kind of taking us out of character, and we'll start to just, you know, start getting out of technique. But it was just horrible. That was the worst drive I've seen in a long time as far as penalty wise, and just definitely shooting ourselves in the foot. If they drive total a -2 yards, so you can't win like that. Not against a team like the Chicago Bears with a good defense, and the game as close as it was.
Yeah, that definitely got one of the trombones sounds coming from me on that one. So dig this though. Yeah, so the guy that you were mentioning, who one of Brady's longtime teammates, that was Teddy Bruschi, and I remember and that was Teddy Bruschi, and I remember Jenna Lane of ESPN. She had written on that, and the quote was, "Don't get caught Brady watching. Don't get caught Brady watching. Don't let this man go out there and amuse you and amaze you to the point where you think that, you know, where you're a bystander and you don't have any responsibility." That's kind of been the issue, or not the issue. That's not really been the issue. That's not been an issue at all. But that was the point that he was making. And in that series, in that instance, that's what I believe that you were saying, that's kind of what was happening. Like they were just depending on him, they being the head coaches, I would say, that to kind of dig and rally everybody, you know, into a better position. And
yeah, I think just not to cut you off, I just think that's one of the things where, you know, kind of the mantra in New Orleans is like, hey, do your job. Everyone has to do their job. It's an accountability thing. And I think that's what Tom Brady kind of holds everyone to that standard, even though he's not in New England. You still have to do your job and do it the right way.
And I wanted to add something, too, if I could.
Absolutely.
You know, I agree with what Slim said about, you know, going back to talking about the discipline and how it starts with head coaching. And, you know, even sometimes if the positional coaches can recognize what's happening in a game, like if, you know, somebody on the sideline can say, hey, these refs are being a little bit stingy tonight. But I will say, aside from the coaching, you know, let's be honest, those guys also have a game to coach. They got plays to call. They got kind of adjustments to make on their own. I think if you're looking to make a team-wide just tone change in discipline, it starts with the players. You know, you got to start holding people accountable. And I'm sure that it happens to a certain degree, but during a game, you know, let's look at it. I couldn't tell you, aside from either Ali Marpet or Ryan Jensen, I don't think there's a clear-cut leader of that offensive line. And in a drive where that undiscipline happens, that's critical, because when you've got Ryan Jensen, who, as you mentioned, is looking for trouble after every snap, that's the way he plays.
Yeah.
A lot of times it works to the Bucs' advantage, and I like watching Ryan Jensen play. This isn't a knock on him. But when you've got to have somebody rally and kind of, you know, settle everybody down a little bit, maybe Ali Marpet can do it, but I've never seen it happen on camera. And, you know, I think it goes for all the position groups. It doesn't really matter. But I think accountability player to player, I don't know if it's something that's lacking because, again, you know, we as regular people don't really get that perspective of that team dynamic. But I think I think maybe there should be a little bit more people holding others accountable when it comes to that undisciplined, because after so long, as we saw on Thursday night, it's just losing you football games.
Indeed, and I want to commend you on that statement, and then also bring something else too, because that's something no one has ever brought up, at least in any conversation that I've seen or heard.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Indeed, and you know who I think would have been that guy to do that last year in the previous seasons was the guy who I advocated not be on the BUCS roster this year. One of my favorite players in the history of BUCS, DeMar Dotson. DeMar Dotson would have been that guy to, try to settle a vet with the playability and the resume of a Ryan Jensen. You got a right tackle at rookie right now who wouldn't do it. You have a right guard now who's just getting into his second full year as a starter. He wouldn't be able to do it. Donovan Smith is one of the perpetual penalty guys on the roster. Like, I think he just got a flag a minute ago. I'm checking right now.
If Donovan Smith tried to rally the troops and discipline everybody, they'll laugh his ass back to the bench. It'll be hilarious. But I do say, I think, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. I'll just say this real quick. But I think if you look at that lineup of guys, naturally, Ali Marpet, I think, is just who you kind of have to look at and put that expectation on, at least for me. Because like you said, you look at the dynamics everywhere else on that line. I just don't know if there's a guy that possesses that cool, calm, and collected attitude that, has been in the league for a little bit longer than the average Joe and has seen a thing or two. So I think Ali Marpet is definitely the guy that you're going to be looking for in that situation.
He's such a laid back kind of, he's such a laid back, everybody else do your job kind of a guy that, I don't know that I would like for him to be that kind of guy, but that's just not his deal. He would rather go to the bench and play his ukulele and and hang out. I mean, a good player, and I like him. He is one of those players, though. I believe he gets put really high. He gets put really, really, really high on another kind of pedestal. I think he's really, really good. He gets spoken of as if he's one of the greats. I think he's going to get there. I think he can get there. But as far as his attitude and as far as his ability to take on being that leader, that's just not what he is at this point in his career. And again, that's a hell of a point because, again, I've never heard anybody bring that up. That's a dynamic that kind of went unnoticed to me for a good bit. But I completely advocated that DeMar Dotson I really had wished that he had played his last season in Tampa. I wish he could have retired a buck. But he was that leader. I'll never forget this, and I'm sorry I'm going a little bit longer than this, but he gave one of the greatest quotes I've ever seen, not just as a BUCS fan, but as a sports fan. I think it was 2015. 2015, I believe, when the BUCS won a game. I forget who it was now. I'm blanking out because I'm excited about this for some reason. But BUCS won a game, and it was like a last-second win, what have you. And DeMar Dotson in the locker room, as cool and calm and collected as you could possibly be. Everybody else you can hear him in the background just chanting and like it was a party. He still had a losing record. DeMar Dotson said, we got to get to the point where at the end of the game, we can just go shake hands and go back to the locker room and be looking towards the next week. He's like, we shouldn't be pretending like we're winning the Super Bowl with every victory. We should be expecting to win every week. When he said that, I said, yo, that is my guy from here on in. Like, that's the kind of winning mentality I want to have around me in life. You can't celebrate the small stuff. You have to be able to appreciate the small stuff, but you can't celebrate it because you don't know how to act at that point. If you want to be a winner, you got to be looking towards winning, and winning should become a habit. That's the kind of mentality that man had. And mind you, he had that mentality his whole career, and the BUCS were losing the vast majority of his career. All he wanted to do was live the way a winner lives. That's all he wanted. I wish it could have happened in Tampa. It didn't. I'm sorry, I kind of went a little bit long on that one, but again, that was a great point by you, Rhett, man. I appreciate that point. Serious business. That's a different perspective that I didn't have, and I'm gonna have to look at that and work with that. That's Great point on that. Anything else on the penalty side, man? Anything else from that world? That was like the number one topic. Everybody that I was looking at through social media, through social media and through all the other news outlets, other than the Vita injury, that was like the most talked about thing, was how undisciplined the BUCS were with 11 penalties in that game.
Yeah, man. I don't know. To me, it's just, when you kind of look at, just, naturally, the teams that doesn't commit penalties win games. The teams that do commit a lot of penalties, they usually find themselves in very hard positions to win. So it can't happen. It has to be more accountability. I don't know if it's kind of the laid back coaching style, the kind of Bruce Arians has, kind of the dictatorship. Like, he kind of just appoint a lot of people to do the job, and he just kind of sit back and wait for all the results. But it has to be more accountability. And that's to Rhett point. Just kind of positionally, like if you have an offensive line, you need a leader on that offensive line. If you have a running back room, you need a leader in that running back room. If you have a wide receiver room, you need a leader in that wide receiver room. To kind of hold those positions accountable, and someone that can kind of snatch a hold in someone and tell them, hey, man, we can't have that, and really hold people accountable. It just kind of piggyback off Rhett's point, and it's an excellent point. But we can't have this, and if we're leading the league in penalties, that lets you know where our identity is as a team, and it's an undisciplined team. And, it's what it is.
Indeed. So part of that you mentioned was the whole coaching side of it. Rhett and I had a bit of a conversation with this on his latest live stream that he's going to end up trying to do a little bit more of here in the CannonFire Podcast. But I've had my questions about our head coach since last season and before he got hired. I think a lot of what I saw that lost the game against Chicago had as much to do with the play calling decisions as any penalty in that game. The big one, I had to look for something to grab. I was about to want to choke the hell out of something. Not going for it on 4th and 1 and taking a freaking 2-point lead in the fourth quarter rather than going for the touchdown. That was the kind of decision that make me question every damn thing. And I told Rhett, I was like, yo, I might lose it. I may lose it if somebody use that no risk it. Whew, my God. Man. Hey, I lose my damn mind if somebody continues to use that moniker with him, because that's out of the window. It's just thrown out of the window. Slim, what was your thoughts when you saw the BUCS kick a field goal, 4th and 1? Basically, a game could have been iced starting with that possession.
Me personally, I'm ready to kick the TV instead of the field goal, and when you kind of think of, just kind of go back and when we went for the 4th and 1 in our own territory, I was like, well, we should kick it, kind of play the field position game. But I kind of understood, what Bruce Arians' philosophy is, no risk, no biscuit. You really want to kind of keep the ball in Tom Brady's hands, and you really want to kind of make a statement. It was weird, man. You really want to kind of keep the momentum going, and you want to kind of not keep deferring to them when we kind of get stopped on the drive. So, like I say, if we're able to go for 4th and 1 in our own territory, it made zero sense to you kind of kick a field goal, in the red zone at 4th and 1 when we already drove the field, and even worst case scenario, we don't get that 4th and 1. The Bears take the ball over, with their backs against the wall, and it kind of was a double negative, because if you're kicking a field goal, you're basically saying I'm put trust in my defense to kind of hold them to drive the field, after the kickoff. But yet I don't trust my defense to kind of, basically, play against them when they're back against the wall, even if we don't make it. So it really didn't make any sense. And at that point, we really needed the touchdown. We couldn't keep kicking field goals. That was probably the closest we were going to get. And really, we really had the Bears defense on their heels. It was time to really go for the jugular and try to go for the throat, man, and really, put the nail in the coffin, so to speak, and really let them know that, we're not going to back down. That was a 4th and 1 I feel like we could have easily made. even with another quarterback sneak or a play action, a quick dump off or anything, I would have been perfectly fine if we went for it and didn't get it. The field goal did us no justice, even though it gave us a quick lead. I just think that was the wrong call. I think it was a horrible call. I think if you're going to be aggressive, be aggressive throughout. Don't risk any biscuit in times where it's kind of reversed. It was no need to risk any biscuit going forward in our own territory, but that was one of the situations where we definitely needed to risk it or biscuit, with their backs against the wall, in order to kind of get closer to get a score.
Say something else.
Goddamn, no risk it, no biscuit. That shit kill me. Rhett, hit me, man. What is, again, we talked about this a little bit last night, and you gave some pretty good perspective on it as well. Do you see that being a lasting effect, Todd Bowles or any other player on the defense, to see that your head coach don't have confidence? There's really no reason to actually do it. The defense didn't do anything at that stage to be like, okay, I have no confidence in them being able to defend the Chicago Bears and Nick Foles, 90-some yards the other way. I mean, what's your take on that? Do you think there can be any effect on that? Do you think there was any talk about that between Bowles and Arians and why he did that? Or you think there's any shakiness in the defensive players on that decision?
I'll be honest. I think maybe a few conversations were had, not only between Bowles and Arians, but I'm sure Brady and Arians talked about it, because Brady in his post game, he talked about how there really wasn't a discussion to go for it on that fourth down. It was, Bruce is sending the field goal unit out there, get your ass off the field, and that's what it was. And he clearly wasn't super happy about it. And, a lot of this next point is taken from our conversation we had last night, but I think what concerns me more about it than, the whole trusting the defense thing, I don't think it's going to leave a lasting effect. I think these guys are obviously focused on winning against Green Bay. I don't even think they're worried about it anymore against Chicago. I think they'll, worry about it when they go over the film and they break down specifics. But I think, the longer lasting effect, I guess, is just the hypocrisy of it. That earlier fourth down, you showed your ass, and it was a call that, quite frankly, it resulted in points, but I just don't think it needed to be made. Like, I don't think the Bucs needed to go for it on that fourth down, up 10 points. You're up 2 possessions. It is what it is. Punt the ball away. But practicing what you preach when you're a guy like Bruce Arians is not exactly a consistent thing that we've seen since he's been here in Tampa Bay. His coaching style is what it is. And it, I said this last night, it might be because he knows he's on his way out. This is maybe his last real run at, a good career season for him. But I don't know. The inconsistencies are definitely there. And I think the hypocrisy of it is what's a little more concerning, because it is just a big game time decision. And if that was a game that counted more, let's say it's a playoff game and that call right there ends your season, everybody's going to be talking about that till the end of time. Why didn't Bruce go for it right there when the game was on the line? And I think, I definitely think the phrase that you don't like needs to maybe be tossed. And let me just reiterate as well as I kind of close this point out. I like Bruce. I've liked Bruce since he's been the head coach of the Buccaneers. I like listening to him talk. We talked about that last night. And I like the new identity that he's given to this Buccaneers football team. But I think it is fair to criticize anybody on this team, especially when expectations are as high as they are. If Tom Brady plays like shit one week, we're going to talk about it. You know what I mean? We're going to talk about it like Tom Brady just played like garbage. So holding people accountable, I guess going back to what we talked about earlier, there are some inconsistencies with Bruce. Is it something that I think we'll see a radical change with? I don't think so. But I think if it starts losing us football games, then, I guess it kind of did there. Yeah. Well, then I guess that's why we're talking about it then.
Indeed. And, and the thing is, going back to that whole accountability thing, twice this season, Bruce Arians has used the word soft.
S-O-F capital T. Soft. Huh?
He called the defense soft twice this season so far. And we lost, Yeah, in week 1 he called them. He said they were playing soft and they gave up yards and so forth. That's his antics in that game. And I got to call them antics. His antics that's as soft as you can get for any coach, even the most conservative coach. That you can't get any more soft than what he did with that call. That call literally gave the Chicago Bears life they did not have.
I totally agree. When you think about it, I mean, it was on the 7-yard line. You know, like, what do you have to lose? And you know, like I say, even if you don't make it, you know, they take the ball over on their 7. You know, that's, you know, I would definitely take those odds of you know, trying to see if Nick Foles can drive the ball 93 yards. You know, when you kind of look at the typical kickoff, when they got the kickoff, you know, they had better field position than what they would have got. You know, they had better field position than what they would have got if they got the ball back first turnover. So, to me, like, when I was looking at the game, I was like, you know, I know we have to just go for it. Like, even if we, like I say, my whole philosophy was, even if we don't make it, it's not like we lose the game there. Like, you give Nick Foles the ball on their 7-yard line, and I would definitely take that bet if you're saying Nick Foles can or cannot drive the ball 93 yards on our defense. Because at that point, Nick Foles isn't throwing deep. The only thing he was killing us with was the real routes after the backfield. So, you know, at some point, like you say, it was the softest call. I think he went against everything we kind of established earlier in the game, being aggressive. Like, to Rhett's point, was up 10 and you go for a 4th and 1 on our own 20. This definitely called to go for it, you know, at the 7-yard line. You know, even if you don't make it, you're still in a good spot. You still play the field position game in this situation, no matter what. It wasn't, to me personally, emotionally, as a sports fan, average sports fan, it just wasn't the right call. I think I'll go for that call in real life. I'll go for that in Madden. I'll go for that in Pee Wee. That's a call. You know, that was a situation where you definitely go for it and live with the results, not a field goal at that point.
Yeah, it seemed like he was trying to outsmart somebody. I'm still looking for whoever that somebody is. I'm like Aaliyah. Who is that somebody? I don't know who he was fooling with that.
I don't know, man. I don't know. You know, him and Chuck Pagano, really good friends. Who knows what the conversation was? It just seemed like he played. It just really seemed like he was scared, man. You know, Khalil Mack had a sack early in that drive. You know, really on that drive. You know, Khalil Mack sacked Brady on that first down. You know, at their 16. So I think it was a combination of like, damn, you know, Khalil Mack is definitely kicking our ass. We don't want to risk another sack, or just maybe the defensive line was really, you know, putting their teeth in our offensive line, and we kind of played scared. That's what that indicates. Like, we were just scared to go for it, you know, because Khalil Mack was definitely taking off and definitely being a disruptive, you know, player on their side of the ball. It's just one of those things. It just, excuse my language, but Bruce Arians bitched up. You know, he bitched up.
No, I agree, man. Obviously, anybody who's listening to this, obviously we're not experts. There's nobody who's an expert on BUCS football outside of the offensive playmakers and play callers. These are all opinions. I certainly have never coached a collegiate or professional team. Neither has Rhett nor has Slim. However, I mean, these are opinions. I don't want anybody to go off talking, you know, crazy, like, you know, what we would have done and what we could have done, should have done, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, we're BUCS fans, all of us, in our own right, in our own ways, and these are opinions, and these are some of the stuff. These are some of the conversations and everything that's kind of being popped up everywhere that BUCS football is talking about. If you think we're the only ones questioning Bruce Arians, you are out of your damn mind. There's a lot of people questioning Bruce Arians, including the opposition coming up in the next few weeks, because you just showed your hand. You literally just showed. Yeah. You literally just showed what kind of coach you are, and I thought I saw it last year. I wrote a piece in week 6 last year talking about how Coach Arians very much reminded me of all the worst parts of the previous 4 coaches. Some of the best, some of the good parts, but a lot of them the worst. And again, I too, like Rhett, don't dislike Bruce Arians as a person. I don't know him, never met him. I would love to meet him for no other No other reason the man like to drink the same whiskey I drink. We both Crown Royal guys. I consider him everywhere King goes. Like, that's why I would love to meet Bruce Arians. He has one of the greatest voices in NFL history, has one of the best personalities and characters in NFL history as far as I'm concerned. Do I trust him? Absolutely not. I don't. But I like him.
I think we all like him, but I think even in this situation, you have to ask Bruce Arians, who did he trust in that drive, or during that possession? Because, okay, do you trust your offense? Do you think your offense was able to pull that off versus their defense, or did you trust our defense against their offense? Because the whole irony of this situation was we kicked the field goal and the Bears got the ball back and they end up punting. So that kind of goes with the philosophy of you just fucking go for it. Don't just go for it, because no one would think Nick Foles can drive the ball 93 yards against our defense. So you go for it. Even if you went for you took the points. I understand the philosophy. Hey, just take the points, but you give them the ball back and they still punt. So Bruce Arians, who do you trust? Make your mind up. What is our identity? What was the thinking process? Or was you scared of Khalil Mack and you just didn't want to take another chance? Or it just didn't make. It didn't go with the flow. It didn't go with the flow of the game. It didn't go with the flow of our game plan leading up to that. When you think about what we did, 4th and 1 on our own territory, it was a no-brainer to me. Like, I didn't even think we was even considering a field goal at that point. So when we did do it, I was like, Bruce, what was going on? I would really love to hear that conversation on what was somebody thinking. Did Tom Brady say, he just say, hey, let's take the points? Who made the executive decision to say, no, offense get off the field, let's take the points? It was just a weird. It was a weird situation, man. I was definitely dumbfounded on why. But like I say, we're not professionals. We never coach professionally. But I think everyone, including spectators outside of BUCS fans, would definitely say, we should have went for it there.
I did get audio of the just the beginning part of a conversation that he and Tom Bowles had when they was going through the tunnels after that game. 1 second.
You must be out of your goddamn mind.
That was pretty much it. That was literally the beginning and the end of the
I'll be honest. I was expecting some exclusive content right there. I was really expecting something that I had never heard before, and I guess I got that. Just not the capacity I was expecting.
Hey, man, I don't do exclusives. I leave that to the other people breaking news and new stadiums and all that shit. That's what I stay out of that realm. I have a lane. It's on the outside, not on the inside. Hey, man, I'm going to let y'all get out here in a few, man. I mean, those are two of the bigger topics that came out here. A couple of things that I wanted to bring to attention. I'm sorry I'm saying so much at this point. Rhett, I brought this up with you last night, and I think I mentioned this to Slim. Two players who have done relatively well for themselves in their early career and early in this season. One of them had a complete disappearance against Chicago. Scotty Miller completely disappeared. Bruce Arians says that he was open. They just didn't get him the ball. He just didn't get the look. That was one thing I wanted to bring up. And then another, Sean Murphy-Bunting, who I know Slim and I kind of talked about, and Rhett, we also touched on it a little bit as well. Both of those guys had an off Week 5 performance against the Bears. This is the second consecutive off week for Sean Murphy-Bunting. And Rhett, you brought it up as well. I believe Evan, your partner from the CannonFire Podcast, he brought it up as well, was that Sean Murphy-Bunting had injured himself in Week 4, and he came back on a short week to play in Week 5. But the past 2 weeks, he's had a struggle, man, before and after the injury. He gave up a really big play on 3rd and 9 against Chicago. That was, and it was when everybody considered, when I say everybody, the broadcasters and the, at home quarterback coaches and defensive coordinators, they're considering that the Bucs were playing soft. And that's not the case. If you watch that game, and again, I wish I was doing the video portion of this podcast. If you watch the game after that 3rd and 9, in which Foles hit, I forget which player he hit, running the running backs out of the backfield.
He hit Anthony Miller on that play concerning SMB, but he hit Montgomery coming out the backfield.
Right. Okay.
If I'm not mistaken,
I think you're correct on that 3rd and 9 when I distinctly remember old boy freaking who kept getting it wrong all night. Troy Aikman, he just kept saying a bunch of silly shit, and I'm sorry for the language, but I'm not really sorry for the language. But he said a bunch of silly shit, and one of the things that he was like, well, I don't know why Todd Bowles decided to play soft. I'm really surprised he played soft in that. Literally 10 seconds after that, you saw Sean Murphy-Bunting ended up in the face of Todd Bowles. I'm sorry, in the presence of Todd Bowles, and Todd Bowles is like asking him, "Hey man, what the hell were you doing?" I mean, he obviously had his mask on, but you can tell that he had run the wrong coverage and he had lost his man, and it wasn't in the game plan. But going back, even from that play, Sean Murphy-Bunting, he gave up. Man, he got hit on 6. He got 6 completions on 7 targets. Like he wasn't getting worked when it comes to yards, but he was getting worked when it comes to, having this guy being open a lot. And then go back to previous week against the Chargers, 8 out of 8, 132 yards they put up on that man. And again, this has nothing to do with him personally. I am a fan of Sean Murphy-Bunting. I've been talking about him since last season. And he's a damn good player. However, the past 2 weeks, he's had some mental lapses and some pretty bad coverage. Rhett, let me start with you, man. Do you think this could be a continuing issue going into Green Bay? Do you think that he rebounds? And to what level do you think he needs to rebound to put the past 2 weeks behind him, which can be an issue with a guy who's coming off of an injury and 2 bad performances?
I think with SMB, there's a lot of factors there. There's ups and downs this early in the season. Week 1, week 2, we saw some really good performances from Sean Murphy-Bunting. He had that injury. And, I want to say that the injury is also still a bit of a factor. I know the short week is something that we had talked about. But I think there are ups and downs in this early part of the season. I think you give SMB that 9-10 day break that they've got between Thursday Night Football and Sunday playing the Packers. I would like to see him rebound. I think he's got a better chance of rebounding and coming back out. As far as the expectations, I guess it really just depends on where your expectations set for this secondary on the entire season. If they played the rest of the season like they played week 1 and 2, then hell, that's all I need out of them. But, when it comes to trending upward, and especially when you start to get these playoff hunts together, you're going to want to trend upwards. And SMB, I'm sure, having the 2 performances that he had back-to-back is in question for that. But I think the injury plays into it. I'd like to see this team healthy, and not even just SMB. Some other people who have had some not-so-great performances. I know Scotty Miller disappeared for a little bit. I really think the Bears just had a good game plan for Scotty Miller. But, SMB in particular, I really would like to see how he plays coming off of, the extra break that they have, the mini bye week, as people call it. I want to see him healthy, ready to go before I can really say anything and write home about it. But I will say that this early in the season, you're going to have your ups and downs, and these past 2 games have just been some downs, unfortunately.
Yeah, excellent point. Yeah, he's a young player too. He's a damn good player. I think he's really, really good. And I think he can actually be a lot better. The first 2 weeks he was making plays left and right. First 2 or 3 series, you heard his name 2-3 times every series. He was just all over the place. So his I don't think his ability is an issue at all. I think he's already shown that he can be a really good cornerback in the league. I just also think, and I've also seen, when players either get hurt or have bad games or so forth, sometimes it lingers. I don't expect this to be a career killer for him whatsoever. Sometimes these things do linger, though, when people lose their confidence and also get, somewhat embarrassed. And that could be the case. I can't speak for him. I know, again, he's a good player. I've never seen him have to bounce back. That was kind of like the real question for me. Like, how long could this linger even after the injury? It's just one of those things I'm super curious about. Slim, tell me something.
I mean, regarding SMB, he had a good start of the season. He finished strong last season. I think the guy is very promising. I think he's a great pickup for us. He was definitely refreshing, regarding us kind of parting ways with VH3. And he was kind of what we expected out of VH3, being kind of the smaller stature defensive back and kind of really being kind of good in the slot and still having the outside ability as well. But the last two games is reminiscent of VH3, kind of paying off and kind of letting everything get caught underneath. But I do think a lot of that kind of attributes to him being hurt. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was a hamstring injury. So I think him playing off is kind of giving him some cushion so he doesn't get beat deep. I think mentally he has it. I think he's a dog when it comes down to defensive as a defensive back. I just think, I think he is still being hampered by the injury and definitely in that situation regarding versus we played the Bears. And he got that quick out caught on him by Anthony Miller. It was definitely kind of one of those mental errors, and I think this definitely was one of those things where he was given too much cushion, kind of playing the sticks, but not necessarily playing up enough to kind of thwart the route being ran, or at least giving Nick Foles a hard look, a hard time to kind of look at it. It was just a wide open throw, and Nick Foles was going to make that. And Anthony Miller, I love him as well. He's from Memphis. I'm from Memphis. He was a great player here. He was good in high school. He's been known since high school here. So I definitely love that he made it to the league, especially at the University of Memphis. But you can't give that type of cushion on a guy, of any guy, at that point in the game. And I don't think it was a mistake by Todd Bowles as far as the play call. I think it was personally SMB playing too far off. And I just really say, hey, that maybe was kind of due to the injury, him just not really being able to be up front and have that make-up speed if he do get beat off the line. It was just one of those mental errors, man. You got to think he is a young guy, just the second year. It killed us. That's one of the things you don't want to see. But it's definitely not a deal breaker with me and how I feel about him and him going forward with the Packers coming up. And it's kind of go to Rhett point as well. Just give him these days to rest and heal up, along with a lot of our players. Give them this time to rest and heal up, and we definitely see a better product on the field, man. You just really realize that they just came off a game. Sunday, Monday is maybe a film day, Tuesday is kind of a treatment day, or vice versa, and Wednesday they're on the plane. So they really had no practice. They probably never practiced, did a light walkthrough, and they're back on the field. So I think this game was very sloppy. It showed that, lack of preparation. Bruce Arians said it himself. He just didn't have his team prepared. But as far as SMB, I'm not worried about him. I just think him being injured and having a mental error on that specific play was the cause. I'm still very high on SMB.
I am high on SMB as well. I saw enough of him last season in the first couple games of this season to know that he can be a damn good defensive back. Again, to both you guys' point, the injury probably hampered him and mentally kind of, just kind of put him in some kind of way. I know if I'm hurting in any kind of physical way, I don't think straight on some time. I mean, in a lot of cases, so that could have been the case with him. Again, damn good player though, man. I'm expecting to see him ascend and get away from the previous couple of games. Again, the question just kind of lingers. How long can that mental lapsing linger in a player's head when injury is concerned and you're trying to play it, you try to play it safe or you're trying to make your way back to health? And that was just one of the questions. Hey, before I move on to Scotty Miller too, though, when it comes to injuries and an injury that can affect every single thing that happens on the BUCS defense, I cannot go any further without speaking on Vita Vea. I thought in week 3, maybe week 4 of last year, that if Vita Vea goes down in this defense, it may look completely different and not in a good way, possibly. Vita Vea suffered what Coach Bruce Arians said was a broken leg. It could be a broken ankle. Either way, he's out of the season completely. We won't see him back unless he, comes back from a good playoff run or something like that. What do you guys think about the issue of replacing a Vita Vea, which pretty much is impossible with one guy? And what do you think is the what do you think is the longer effect, specifically since we're coming off of Sean Murphy-Bunting, the secondary? The secondary and the linebacker is basically 8 because Vita Vea in particular was one of those guys that basically took up 2 offensive linemen or an offensive lineman or a running back, leaving room for any of the linebackers or one of the safeties to come up and get pressure on the quarterback. Without Vita Vea, who are we looking at? What are we looking at realistically? I know we got the 7th round of Khalil Davis. I hoping for the best, but he's not going to replace what Vita Vea can do as an individual.
I don't think. I mean, you said it yourself. You can't replace a Vita. You just can't. When it comes to looking at a suitable replacement, I'm sure you can put some guys in there who will be serviceable, but like you said at the top of your point, losing Vita Vea changes the entire tone of that defense. And the sad part is that we don't have a game for so many days, so we're not really going to know until they hit the field. We saw the BUCS. They reached out to
Damon Snacks Harrison.
Yes, Damon Snacks Harrison on the Seattle practice squad, and he elected to stay over on the West Coast, which is fine. I get it. He's got a family. I think he was playing in Detroit before.
Yeah.
But he basically went coast to coast, so I can understand that going back to the East Coast in a short time. There's a lot of factors in it. I get it. It's whatever.
I didn't want him anyway. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but I didn't want him anyway because he has the New Orleans Saints symbol, the French symbol on his left arm. So I don't give a damn about him. He can't. He got to wear long sleeves. He brought his ass to Tampa anyway. So
yeah, I didn't know that tidbit, but definitely. But, there's a lot of factors that go into that. I know that if the BUCS wanted to look at anybody else outside of the organization, maybe they give a call to Xavier Williams. He was in for a visit the same time that they had Kyle Love.
Yep.
Bringing back Kyle Love is always an option. But, if they don't go that route or they just simply don't sign anybody, then I think what you're going to see, at least for the time being, is you're just going to see a rotation of guys in there. Me personally, you're not going to replicate that push that Vita Vea gave you. You said it best. He occupies 2 offensive linemen, and that's because he can, grown man strength them into the backfield with one hand each. He is an insane specimen, and his sample from 2020 that we saw this year, he was playing like the best nose tackle in football. So it's definitely a big loss. I think Will Golston, I hate to say it because there's a lot of people who don't see it, but I think Will Golston gives you your best chance at getting that push. I think it's because he has a better first step than Sue. Obviously, Sue's a better fit for that position just because of his size. He's got a little bit of weight on Will Golston. But I think you're going to see a rotation. I think you'll see Nacho in there, second up on the depth chart. I'd love to see a little bit more Khalil Davis, see what his sample size looks like. But I think you'll see Sue. I think you'll see Will Golston. And against Green Bay, maybe you'll see everybody on limited snaps playing nose tackle. But if they see something they like, then I think the next week moving forward, you'll kind of get that permanent decision, if I had to guess.
Indeed. And Slim, I'll get to you in just a second. But I want to say this, and I'm going to reiterate it. The importance of Vita Vea goes far beyond his being in there as a big body and a run stopper. That's been on people's minds, on their fingertips, and on the tips of their tongues since literally the day he got rumored to be drafted to the BUCS. Space eater, big man, listen, pushing the pocket is rushing the passer. Vita Vea did that better than any defensive lineman on the roster and one of the best in the league. That again, when I say he affects the entire defense, I don't want anybody to focus in on just his run ability and his run stopping ability. This dude occupied not just space, players. I mean, the attention was on that dude. He's the only guy on the defensive line that required a double team on every other snap. He's that kind of good in the passing game as well as the running game. So again, just know anybody listening who has not taken the chance to actually go and look at what Vita Vea means to the defense overall, not just the run game, pass game, everything. Go back and look at what that man does. Go back and look at the highlights if you have to. If you have to just use YouTube, go back and look at the highlights of Shaq Barrett, and look at what's happening when he goes and get those sacks on about 90% of those. And I'm not exaggerating at all. On about 90% of the sacks that he has, look how many hands are on Vita Vea. That's going to be hard to replicate. Slim, tell me something good, man.
I think it's a horrible loss for the defense, and it definitely kind of piggyback off Rhett's point again, man. When I look at it, I'm a car guy. You look at a car. All right, the defense is a vehicle. I think Vita Vea is the frame of a car because that frame dictates everything else around it, and Vita Vea dictated the defense. He was the main component of how their defense was run. And that's why it was so instrumental for him. And it's a reason why Todd Bowles is able to be so aggressive because he has a guy. He has basically two guys in one. Because Vita Vea obviously takes up two blockers every time the ball hikes. And even in games where I sit back and look, and you can see Vita Vea basically push center and offensive guards into the running back. Like, if he can't get to him himself, he'll push a guard into the running back and stop the running back from going. Like, Vita Vea will literally stand a guard, a 350-pound man up, and wherever gap the running back is going, Vita Vea will push this guard into the gap so he can stop the running back from going. That's just the unparalleled strength and value he brings to the defensive line. So it's going to be a huge loss. It changes the whole face of the defense because now you can't have those coveted A-gap blitzes we were doing the first 2 weeks with Devin White and Levante David blitzing the A-gap because Sue and Villa takes up so much out of the offensive line in the middle that you can rush those linebackers up in the middle and they come through untouched. You can't replicate that type of production, and he's not a stat stuffer by no means, but it's also a bonus when he gets to the backfield and makes a play. And you was kind of seeing that this year where he was getting it. Like in the Bears game, he got a sack, and he was getting those pressures where he was just half a second late from blowing the play up in the backfield. I think Vita Vea was kind of the new resurgence of an Albert Hayworth, like just one of those guys, just a monstrous guy that you have to account for no matter what. And he was definitely had to be game plan against, every game when the offense kind of goes in and they're in the offensive line room, like, hey, you have to watch this guy, you have to double this guy. No matter where part of where he lines up on the defensive line, he demands that attention more than anyone. And to your point, though, Robert, like Shaq Barrett, JPP, those guys doesn't get sacks. They don't have those one-on-one opportunities without a guy like Vita Vea to start with, occupying so much in the middle of the offensive line and the defensive line, and you couple that with Sue, and you have two monstrous guys, two-headed monster in the middle of the defensive line. That I don't think it's an offensive line out there, but maybe besides the coach, maybe they can kind of really hold these guys in check, or just to a certain extent. So yeah, with Vita Vea out, and especially he's out for the year, it's no return. It changes the whole look of their defense, man. And I was and when he went down and the day later, I was like, well, who could come in? My first person in my mind was Damon Harrison, because he kind of resembles something he can kind of, fill in that void. But he declined, and I respect that. But, if Will Golson, I like Will Golson because he's a monstrous type of guy as well. He lacks the whip. So I think size-wise and just what he brings, I think he can definitely demand some attention as well, but you can't replicate that, man. Not with the youth and the strength and the size of Vita Vea Braun. I think Vita Vea made everyone's job easier across the line, no doubt. And it definitely let the edge guys work their one-on-ones and definitely wear down the tackles. It allowed Levante David and Devin White to run freely and definitely make those plays, chasing guys to the sideline, those side-to-side plays. And then also, when you talk about pushing the pocket, it allows the defensive backs to play more aggressive. Like Carter Davis is definitely a kind of a result of that. He's getting more interceptions. He's able to be more physical because it cuts the timing down that the quarterback has to throw. So without Vita Vea, man, and it's kind of at the worst time because the Packers are playing out of their mind. You definitely want all hands on deck for that team. And Aaron Rodgers is a masterful kind of quarterback. He picks you apart no matter what. It was worst timing, but it's a huge loss, and a lot of people don't really realize just the value Vita Vea brings to their defense. Our defense changed instantly without Vita Vea. We're not as good of a run defense anymore without Vita Vea. We won't be as good of a press cover defense without Vita Vea. Everything changes off one man, and it's sad to see him go, man. It's sad.
It is absolutely sad. And I'm gonna catch flack for this, but I don't give a damn about catching flack about anything. If you've ever seen me in social media or anything, talking to BUCS fans and what have you. But before the draft, I pounded the table to stock up on the defensive line. People will tell you all the time you can't draft for injuries. You can't draft for this and that. I'm like, damn it, yeah, you can, and yeah, you should. I'm not going to hindsight and talk about who we could have had previous, before, end of the draft picks, or who I would not have out of this 2020 draft in order to have those fourth round picks that we, traded away or gave away for whatever player. But when you're talking about having a player like Vita Vea and putting him next to another young player who could have been, the same type of aggressive player where a defense actually had to look at him and possibly double team him and so forth, and some of the players that were available and some of the higher end talent that weren't 7th round draft picks, weren't undrafted free agents. I just keep going back to that notion. I'm trying to fight, the possible bias that I have or may have when I look at stuff like that, again, because hindsight is 20/20. But when I look and I talk about how this team cannot, I talked about it forever, how this team should not be built in a win now mode in which this team has been driving on for the past 4 years, 5 years possibly. Like, that's what I was talking about. This is what I'm talking about. Like, everything had to be on a perfect case scenario for this stuff to pan out. Vita Vea and the defensive line had to be intact all year round and play at the high level that they played in last year to make some of these moves work, to give away these draft picks and so forth. And still, here we are with the offense still. I know the injuries and all this stuff, but the coaching issues and all this stuff that's still hindering the offense. And we, put so much money into the offense, and now we only have Sue for another year possibly, and all these other players who on these short-term contracts here in Tampa. It bothers me. It bothered me that the team was built the way that it's built, and it's not built to withstand losing a player like Vita Vea and having to, possibly having to go now outside and rent another defensive lineman, when we could have had a defensive lineman on the roster and a young talent alongside Vita Vea. That bothers the hell out of me. And again, it's 20/20 hindsight when it comes to talking about who we could have had in the draft and all these moves and this and that. But we gave away 4th round picks, whether it was to trade up in the stupidest damn trade I can think of in recent memory when it comes to the BUCS, to trade up one spot, or, for the opportunity to give $10 million to an extra right tackle and Rob Gronkowski for the majority of this season so far. That shit bothers me. And I know some people won't agree with it. Some people would never, ever want to see the BUCS without Rob Gronkowski. I don't give a damn about them because they're here for a year and a half and that's it. But that shit bothers me. That whole win now stuff is reflective in the fact that we now are literally one player away from being possibly nowhere near as good as we were before. Like, that shit kills me.
I think the depth absolutely is something that comes with the identity of this team. Like you said, it's a win now kind of face for the Buccaneers on paper right now. And yeah, you've got all this talent, but then you look at the depth in certain areas. And I think there's a lot of areas where they're all right. But defensive line is one of those things. And Evan actually said it more than I did coming into the season. But that was his position. He said, look, I'm comfortable with this team, but I'm not comfortable with the depth at defensive line. And I think maybe taking a guy a little bit earlier in the draft would have helped if you're looking for that. You can't plan for injury. Obviously, the BUCS came into the season expecting everybody to be healthy. But But yeah, it absolutely is a predicament that they have found themselves in, and it's unfortunate because I think there were some moves that could have been made, whether it was in the draft or whether it was just signing that one more defensive lineman. You know, I really think that the Bucs have themselves in a bad situation right now, and yeah.
It's ugly, man. Again, I want to apologize for the language, but I kind of don't want to apologize for the language. But I mean, that's kind of what it is. I hate that this team was built on perfect case scenario. It's just like you pay for insurance not because you think you're gonna get in an accident. You pay for insurance because in case an accident happens, you at least got some kind of coverage. You at least got something to bolster the issue, whatever it is that came up. So yeah, you have to plan for at least partial injury. You got to have a contingency plan for something outside of, this whole perfect world, which just really doesn't exist. And again, God willing, Todd Bowles works his magic, players rise to the occasion, and good things happen. That's going to be the hope. I'm not going to stop watching any games. I'm not going to call for anybody's job. I'm not one of those cats. Never have been, never will be. But people on notice, man. I think Todd Bowles can make things happen because he's shown it. But the defense, who has taken the burden of the identity of this team, which is so weird, they've taken on not the burden, but they've taken on the identity of the team, which I've always wanted. Well, I've wanted for a long time because that's what I grew up on as a Bucs fan. I grew up on the Bucs starting back in 94 when Hardy Nickerson and John Lynch were on board and things were happening then. I knew the defense more than anything else. So I've been waiting to see this team come back to being a defensive team and having a defensive identity for a long time. So I'm glad to see that's the case. But it's almost as if it's been done against all odds. And that's weird. And it's almost weird to say because we spent so much time trying to build a franchise quarterback, trying to have that whole thing sorted out. And that's not been the case. It's literally... It's just weird. It's weird, but I'm glad to see that the Bucs defense is the unit that I don't feel the sickest about every damn Sunday. But the fact that we were one player away from being completely out of that realm and being a completely different defense in total, it just bothers me because I feel like it could have been. I feel like it didn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way, and I could be completely wrong. Sunday, the Bucs may come out and shut Green Bay all the way fucking down. That could happen. I have that much faith in my secondary, my linebackers, and a few other players. I was about to say defensive line, but I caught myself. I'm lying. Defensive line, I love Will Golston. I think Sue can be solid. Outside of that, I'm nervous as fuck. It's fucking scary.
I mean, with Vita going down once again, I know it's a huge blow, but I don't think it's the end of the world. I do trust in Todd Bowles to kind of come up with something. I think he'll work the guys around, trying to find the right combination of guys. And one thing about Nacho, I like Nacho. He's been a rising star in the defense, especially through training camp. We all know that. I think this is time for Nacho to definitely get more snaps, and we can definitely see what he really brings to the table. With Nacho being kind of the smaller guy, but he's a shit talker. I like him. He play hard, and usually when he gets in, you see him in the backfield sometimes. The few times he gets in the game, I usually see him on the ball. He's involved in the tackle. He's in the backfield. So I think Todd Bowles, he's going to make it happen. He won't see what the product is until we go against Green Bay, who also has a good offensive line. It definitely hampers us, but it changes the defense. But I don't think it really makes us feel like, oh, we're not the same. I think Todd Bowles will make something happen. But with Vita going down, I think we all can agree that everyone else on the defense has to step up. We're going to need more out of Sue. We're going to need more out of our edge rushers. We're going to need more out of Golston. We're going to need Nacho to step up and definitely provide more production. Just not off the bench now. He's going to be definitely more of a guy that's going to be more in the rotation. So I think we just have to see the product and see what we see, what they put on the field with Green Bay, and even after Green Bay, when we play the Raiders, who played an awesome game, they shut down the Kansas City Chiefs. I think John Gruden took a page out of Bill Belichick. I think John Gruden took a page out of Bill Belichick on how to give Mahomes a hard time. And I think a lot of teams are going to be noticed what we do or what the Packers do versus us with Vita out. So it's all, that's how the league is set up. But I'm eager to see. It hurts to have Vita down, and he definitely was an instrumental piece of their defense, man. As you can see, he made everyone else better on their defense, no doubt. But I think we do have guys in Nacho, and to Rhett's point, maybe you stick Will Golston in the interior and see what kind of attention he demands. And, but everyone else going to definitely have to step up, because you don't have that guy that's going to push the pocket like Vita does or demand that double team attention every snap.
Yeah, so when it comes to Golston, man, and we're going to get out here in just a second. No, I'm sorry. Well, I have one more thing I want to ask you guys about. But going back to Golston for me always served a lot better on the edge. It kind of goes back to his role when he did last year as well. I know this year he's kind of moved in and out, and he can play whatever. But he's always been really good at setting the edge, especially on the run. And through his years, he's grown into being a damn good pass rusher, even though he doesn't have all the sacks and accolades and so forth. But he finds his way in that backfield, man. So I'm really curious to see if they utilize him more on the inside, or if they have him on the edge to kind of do what he normally does, or what he kind of established himself as throughout his career and continuing into last season.
Yeah, I think Golston will be okay. I think, like I say, and not to cut you off, but I think Golston, like to Rhett's point, he has a quicker first step than Sue, and I think Nacho as well. So I think those guys are going to be a combination of a rotation where you kind of pair Sue and one of those guys in the inside, and you kind of have JPP put his hands in the dirt instead of standing up now, and have Shaq kind of be the primary rusher coming off whatever side that kind of allows him to do the most damage. And I think, like I say, all together, I think Ty Bowles is going to figure it out. I think it's the worst timing now because we kind of arguably going against the best team in the NFC right now, and it's definitely going to be a statement game. And to Bruce Arians, comment, now we get to see who we are, losing that heartbreaker on the road Thursday night football prime time against the Bears, and now we come right back again, basically prime time again on the afternoon game against the Packers, at home. So it's. I got faith. I'm very optimistic on what Ty Bowles can do. I think Ty Bowles is a good defensive mind. But we have to put the guys together as next man up, man, and we have to roll with it. And like I say, maybe we got enough time throughout. We got all of next week. They may bring back Kyle Love to kind of add to their depth. As a guy that can kind of take up some space in the middle. Who knows? It's still kind of early to tell. That's for another podcast later down the week. But I'm okay, man. I hate to lose Villa, but I think we'll be okay. I think Todd Bowles figures it out.
Indeed, that's the hope. Man, I was going to go into another topic. I'm actually going to save it for I'm actually going to save that for the middle of the week as well. And I thank you guys for your time. Real quick. So Slayer, man, I know you on the social media, and we can find you active on Facebook and so forth in the Real Bucks Talk groups, as well as I believe the Buckaholics groups and so forth, man. If fans wanted to hear and see from you and some of your takes, what spaces do you normally occupy in the social media world or throughout the internets?
I'm mainly active on Facebook. It's Big Slim, BIGG. SLIM, and I'm very active in all the kind of Buccaneer groups on Facebook, the official Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan page, Buckaholics, Real Bucks Talk. That's one of my favorite groups. Kush Cow Chronicles, my guy Matt Grisham. I just kind of spend my time and kind of bounce from group to group and join in on topics and discussions regarding the team and the game and what's coming up and what we do. Just kind of the general convo. That's where I'm mostly active at. And other than that, between my time kind of, giving my spiel on different topics, I'm sitting back listening to the podcast like yours, and definitely CannonFire Podcast is one of my favorites. I have you guys locked in. I'll get alerts every time you guys post a new episode and everything else, man. I'm a listener and a guy that can kind of give my opinion as well. I'm just a good avid Bucks fan, man, and that's what it is. So Big Slim on Facebook, BIGG SLIM. You can find me in any of the Bucks groups, and I'm always down to talk Buccaneers football.
Hey, much appreciated, man, on both ends of that. I always appreciate, having a conversation with you, whether it's on the Facebook Messenger and the books or here on the podcast, which is, I think, again, this is your third time on. I greatly appreciate it and love your insight. You always keep me in check if I slip up or do some, have the wrong perspective, like Rhett, hit me with something I didn't have my mind on earlier. That's why I look for, and that's why I seek out opinions like yours and Rhett Matthew. Rhett Matthew, once again, co-host of the CannonFire Podcast with the Philly BUCS fan, young Evan Wanish. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you. I know Chris Fisher of BUCS Brief Podcast fame. He appreciates you guys' work. I most certainly agree with him and thinking you guys are two of the best young cats too, man. Y'all young, super young, I believe. And y'all know y'all business, and I appreciate your work. Evan is one of the most knowledgeable young cats I've listened to in any form when it comes to being a BUCS fan. And you, Rhett, you kind of moderate the podcast as well as anyone I've heard when it comes to being a BUCS fan and the podcast. I thank you for your work, man. I know you got some announcements and so forth coming up with your podcast and everything that's coming up later in the week. Let any fan who's foolish enough to not know who and what you are, let them know where they can find you throughout the week. BUCS coverage, radio appearances, where can they find you?
First off, I really appreciate all the kind words. Slim, I appreciate you listening as well, man. It really does mean a lot coming from you guys. So the CannonFire Podcast, ladies and gents, if you want to check that out, we drop 2 episodes a week every Monday and Thursday. Monday is typically the game review show, and Thursday is the game preview show. YouTube is the best way to experience the show. We got a lot of great video going on over there and some exclusive video content as well. So if you're not subscribed over there, make sure you go do that as well. You can also listen to the show anywhere you download a podcast if you're into the audio side of things. And you can follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are CannonFire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. Now, for myself, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter mostly at Rhetticus, RHETTAKUS. And I do promise that if you follow me on either of those, I will follow you back.
Indeed. And that's serious business. That's not just flattery, by the way, anybody who's listening. There's a lot of BUCS content out there. There is. And you'll hear people say this on every BUCS podcast there is. You'll hear them talk about how much content there is. I'm on the outside of some of that silly shit. All of it ain't good.
Yeah, I agree. Trust me, I'm a guy that kind of shuffle through a lot of. I shuffle through in my. I do a lot of travel sometimes, so I have to drive a lot. So I don't really use the radio. I just kind of listen to a lot of the podcasts. So I shuffle through a lot of the BUCS podcasts, and like I say, once again, not to kind of be one of those guys, but man, CannonFire Podcast is always a go-to podcast for me. And they always have good content, good, truthful content, unbiased content, man. And I like I say, once again, I definitely appreciate you guys keeping it going, man, and definitely informing guys like me to have an opinion, in my own words. So, yeah, if I can, definitely recommend someone that kind of want to get into the podcasting and listen up between the games, CannonFire Podcast is definitely one of the best ones you need to listen for.
Serious business.
I very much appreciate that, guys. Thank you so much.
Indeed. So CannonFire Podcast, please, by all means, follow those cats and stay up on it, as well as stay up with me and mine. I'm always on Twitter, 2 different profiles, either, real name, Robert Green. You can find me there. And also, if you're following this podcast now, you already know on all my stuff. I don't like to plug anything like that. But it's all about CannonFire Podcast and what they got going on this week. Everybody tune in and find out what's going on with them. Big Slim, Young Rhett, I thank you both with an F. Thank you guys, man. It's a great conversation. God willing, I get to talk to both of you guys sooner than later on the next podcast. Fellow BUCS fans, you guys all be safe. Wear those masks, and I mean that. And I want to get back to Raymond James Stadium as soon as I can without having to wear a hazmat suit. So y'all get y'all thing together out there, man. And I'll be back in a couple of days. Looking forward to the Green Bay BUCS Raymond James Stadium reunion finally back at the stadium with a decent amount of fans. We'll be looking to see what's going on in that game. We'll be previewing that. Thank you guys very much again. Appreciate you.